what I'm realizing is the ones who are able to scale fast can actually absorb an increasing CAC.
You have to establish what are the things in my business that actually have the leverage to make a difference.
You have to zoom out to really understand what might be strategically impacting the incrementality of your CAC on the next dollar spent on ad spend. That's what you've really got to be thinking about. All right, Dylan, we're back. Episode 43, not 42. Right before I hit record, I thought we were recording 42. We've already done that. What's happening, man?
Not much. I know we were making sure we haven't talked about this exact topic before. I think this is a fun one. It's nice to try to bring your CAC down. It's easier said than done. There's only so much you can do, but there's, it's a never-ending game of either trying to make more money on the front end or make more money on the retention side. And I'm looking forward to diving into CAC today. What made you want to talk about this today, Jon?
So what made me want to talk about this is I had a couple different calls over the last week with brands that are looking at potentially working with To Grow CFO. And it dawned on me that both of these brand founders think their strategy, what has gotten them to the point of scale that they're currently at, is that they've worked on reducing their CAC, which opens up the margin between gross margin dollars per order and acquisition costs. And then they scale up until that margin gets too tight. And then they bring CAC back down and they just keep doing that. But I know from working with a ton of different brands, that kind of, rinse and repeat cycle doesn't always work forever. Actually, I've never seen it work forever. It changes over time. It also totally depends on which game you're playing, right? You playing the high LTV game or the new customer dominant game or the high SKU count game. And so I want to record an episode today where we explore the answer to the question, can you actually reduce your CAC as you scale? And so I want to start, Dylan, with we're going to spend the whole episode talking about the caveats, but the high level, what's the high level overgeneralized take that you have on if you're scaling really fast and aggressively, can you actually reduce your CAC as you scale?
If it's a product that you've been selling for a while, the odds of, say, after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a specific product and launching hundreds or thousands of ads, probably thousands, that you're going to find a new way to get CAC to go down unless you're doing something fundamentally wrong media buying wise, which if you have a good team is unlikely. The incremental gains from media buying are generally not huge unless you're doing something really wrong. The odds of you getting CAC to go down as you scale is low. CAC will generally go up. The more you spend, you'll generally find CAC goes up over time. So having your business strategy for growth and more profit revolve around, I'm going to figure out how CAC can go down with the same product is highly unlikely.
Yeah.
Now, if you change your offer, which is a whole other thing, different ballgame. Then again, there's only so many offer variations for each product you can do. But if it's purely media buying and creative, do not think that it is a thing you can bet on to come true. There are gains to be had, and good creative can make a big difference, 10%, 20%. But again, that's only going to get you so far.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've learned, honestly, dude, in recording 42 episodes with you and just all the experience that I have with helping dozens of brands scale. Look, when I started in ecom, I thought that scaling fast and profitably was all about managing CAC. And to some degree, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying stop trying to manage your CAC. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that having the benefit of seeing, dozens and dozens of P&Ls of scaling brands, what I'm realizing is the ones who are able to scale fast and profitably and get, what I think a typical ecom brand founder would call big, is that they can actually absorb an increasing CAC. But that being said, that doesn't mean you just give up the fight, right? And say whatever, my CAC is going to increase. So what I do want to talk about is I want to get your candid take on what some of the common things that I see brands do to try to manage CAC or try to get it to come down. What kind of an impact you really think what kind of impact you have seen them have on a brand that is scaling. So the first one You mentioned offer. Like, what should a brand expect an offer, finding a better offer? What should they expect that to actually do to their CAC? And what are the limitations of what it can actually do to their CAC?
If you're a high LTV business, a lot of brands start off by having a really big mix. A lot of brands will traditionally start off with a hybrid offer where you have the option to subscribe and save and one-time buy, and maybe there's some buy more, save more in there. As you get bigger and as CACs go up for some brands, it's actually more effective to sell people less on the front end, but make the subscription offer more aggressive, and then you have better CAC to LTV. And I've seen offers like that be the thing that unlocks like tremendous growth. Not always, but that's an example of like an offer change that could take a business from maybe doing like low 8 figures to mid 8 figures alone. The offer is one of the highest leverage things you can pursue. On the flip side, if you're not high LTV, and you're say like a high SKU count, one-time purchase dominant store, offer can definitely help, but it's also going to be more similar to like creative usually. Maybe it's going to add like an incremental 10 or 20%. In that case, your better lever is probably going to be more, newer, better product. So the offer testing is super important. And I think it's important to frame it based off of the business model that you're in. But in the case of high LTV brands, it's like kind of maybe the main thing, like one of the main things. For other brands, it's kind of like another tool in the toolbox, if that makes sense.
For sure. Look, I mean, I don't want to give like a sweeping generalization answer here, but and maybe you disagree with some of this, but like in terms of getting your CAC to decrease as you scale, the two places where I, with my CFO, with my finance hat on, see that actually play out most frequently for a time. It doesn't last forever, usually. For a time, blended CAC across all channels or across all products may come down as you successfully launch new products and successfully launch new sales channels. I don't really see meaningful impacts to CAC lowering outside of those two strategies. Now, there may be momentary reductions in CAC from offer testing or like CRO, testing on, landing pages and conversion rate optimization stuff. But I don't see that permanently lower CAC or semi-permanently to the extent that it opens up a new round of scale, especially for brands that don't have meaningful 3 to 6 month LTV. What do you have to like add to that?
The biggest knock on D2C brands is traditionally revenue durability, and it's because of the variability in performance of ads.
Totally.
And if you have a low to mid TAM product and it's first time customer dominant, you just have to manage your expectations as to what's going to be possible, because the incrementality of your spend is probably not going to be the highest. There are brands out there that get deep into the 8 or 9 figures with, relatively slim margin on acquisition. However, the TAM is huge and they have multiple products, so they diversified, even though they have a bunch of these like low margin as a percent, but healthy dollars coming out of them in terms of funnels. You can have great businesses built off of that, but it's a different game that you're playing. One thing that the mistake I see the most common with CAC is like, it's very tempting to just be like, okay, well, like I need this CAC. And then you have to think about, if you want that CAC, what are the repercussions of it? Because for example, maybe if you want a 20% reduction in CAC, you might have to cut spend by 80% or 90%. Or maybe if you roll out cost controls, which for some brands makes a ton of sense, that may occur. Are you okay with that trade? And it just depends into the context of your P&L, your cash flow position, so on and so forth. But what's difficult is when you're in a place of uncertainty, the path forward temporarily becomes unclear until you find the new offer that actually is going to work. So it's a risk management discussion where CAC is here, you don't want it to be here. You want it to be here. How much do you want to spend at CAC here or here or here or here? Because to go all the way to where you want it to be, this is an extreme scenario, you may have to cut back a ton. So it's a conversation you have to have with your finance team, your marketing team, and basically decide, while we try to find the new offer that works well, what am I going to do? And that's more for a brand that's struggling with CAC, but it's a difficult conversation because sometimes the path forward is not clear and you have to test new things, and that can be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I'll say too is that like to get a more durable, I'll call it durable instead of permanent or semi-permanent, like a more durable reduction in CAC, the things you have to do on like deciding to launch a new sales channel or launch new products, those are not just like simple, like pull a lever endeavors. Those are big, like multifaceted projects. Launching new products and both the P&L and balance sheet impact of that, launching a new sales channel and both the P&L and balance sheet impact of that. These are big decisions. Like one thing I see generally, totally depends on the product category, but when a brand gets to, maybe mid 8 figures and they're trying to scale to 9 figures and they're not a high LTV brand, inevitably we've got to start talking about physical retail, right? In the US, big box retail, right? Things of that nature. Like if there's sufficient TAM, right, in that particular channel, even though you're taking a lower gross margin as a percentage of the sell price, the CAC tends to be super low, right? And why? Because the distribution channel already has the demand, right? They're the ones driving the demand. And so like your reduction in gross margin is basically you paying for their CAC, right? But for a lot of brands, if the numbers work, you're opening up massive TAM, massive scale at a profitable, a profitable unit economics. But making that decision, dude, that is like a multi-month to multi-year endeavor. Even just getting in, I've seen brands need to fight for 2 years to get into Target. And then when they get into Target, what they have to change in their supply chain, what they have to change in their receivables management, what they have to change in their inventory planning, it all changes. They have to start thinking about hiring different people inside, engaging different consultants and agencies. The point I'm making is you actually can reduce your business-wide CAC, but it's big, multifaceted projects and strategic endeavors that impact all 3 of your financial statements: P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. So I don't want anyone to think that these durable CAC reductions, right, are things that you can just do overnight, right? Most of the stuff you can do overnight is, I don't want to say less durable, but it's probably not as long lasting at scale.
Yeah. And this is why either working with partners with a lot of experience or having, colleagues in the industry to guide you, because a lot of D2C brands in specific kind of come up on paid ads. So it's like the muscle they've built is I'm going to fix everything in Facebook ads, or like I'm going to fix everything in like these funnels. But what I've seen happen many times is the problem finally starts to come where their CAC has been getting worse and their margins are shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And because some of these things you just described may take 6 to 24 months to actually materialize, all of a sudden the actual solution to your problems are going to take a year. You need them to be fixed in 3 months because of something you've committed to on the inventory side or something. So knowing what to do next and like the order of operations as a brand founder is key to not basically hitting that roadblock that will cause your business to stagnate for a year and a half while you try to fix the thing. And sometimes that involves doing things that are less guaranteed, or not guaranteed, but less probable, because when you're doing anything new, there's no data to support it. But some of those bets are the bets you have to place with the more unknown upside, because they're the levers that actually can get your business to where you want to go. So I think that's one side of the equation. The other piece to think about too, and I've seen this happen with brand founders when CAC gets to a bad place, is they start trying to basically fix the situation by doing a million things at once. And it's just really important to remember that you have to establish what are the things in my business that actually have the leverage to make a difference. Like if you're doing $2 million a month in sales, or a couple $1 million a month in revenue, and all of a sudden something bad happens with your ad account, gets 10, 15% less efficient, and you're in a position where you're barely turning positive contribution margin, for the sake of example. And then you decide, I'm going to go launch affiliate TikTok shop. I'm going to start testing on Pinterest. You go down the list of like things to do that you're currently not doing. And the upside of those things, maybe they're huge, but more often than not, they might be like $50K a month.
Yeah.
And you don't need to solve a $50K a month problem. You need to go and like turn your $2 to $3 million a month business back into a place where it is healthy. So you're diversified. You're like spreading yourself thin, pursuing these things that maybe they're okay to pursue when times are good, but like probably not. Like unless they're going to be a meaningful amount of profit and cash flow to your business in context to the size it currently is, you just have to actually be very diligent about choosing to focus on the things that have the leverage to create the outcome that you want. And again, it's hard to know what to pick. So having good partners to help you through that process is incredibly crucial, because sometimes it's offer, sometimes it's new products, sometimes it's both. Sometimes you might have like you've never negotiated your COGS. Well, there you go. That solves your problem right there. Like there's so many different things that can be done, and identifying what's worth spending your time on is the most important part and the hardest part.
There's something I want to say in addition to that, which is like, because the revenue durability of a D2C brand can be so volatile, right? Or delicate. This is one of the many reasons why your fixed overhead cost structure needs to be like lean and nimble, not just lean, like that you can change it quickly if you need to. And so like the more operating leverage you have, we've talked about operating leverage before on the show. Operating leverage is high fixed cost business generally because you've vertically integrated, and the strategic like bet there is that you're going to convert variable costs of manufacturing and fulfillment and warehousing to fixed costs. And at scale, you're going to make way more money. But what's the flip side, the downside? The downside is if you don't have enough scale and revenue, you are not nimble with your fixed cost structure. Getting rid of long-term leases on buildings or selling buildings you bought, or changing up your supply chain so that you start manufacturing through co-manufacturers instead of doing it yourself. Those are big endeavors, right? And so I always caution brands to vertically integrate until they've built sufficient revenue durability into their business. I'll give you an example of one that did it right. Guardian Bikes, which I helped start and scale, their revenue durability is patented Sure Stop brake system. It's a bulletproof patent. Amazon, Schwinn, Huffy, they've all tried to copy it, and none of them have been willing to do it because it's such an airtight patent. That's a big part of their revenue durability. Their brand at 9 figures is now becoming part of their revenue durability. But what allowed us to basically confidently go vertically integrate, set up a factory in the US, is that IP protection was giving us sufficient revenue durability. We didn't have the same concerns as a brand that could become commoditized very quickly at scale because of other competition. And so I'm just trying to give you an example to think through that it's not just looking at numbers on paper or in a spreadsheet and saying, man, if I make this stuff myself, I can make this much more money per unit. You have to think strategically. Some of the things we've talked about here, TAM, right? How much LTV do you have versus being new customer dominant? What's some of the other competition in the space? Where does your customer just organically shop? What other channels does your customer show up in? I have a brand that sells something that like organically people just buy it in a hardware store. It's time to get into Home Depot, like Lowe's and Ace, just because that's where people buy this stuff, right? You need to ask yourself these questions, which are not the, hey, what's going on with my Facebook ad account? Hey, this spreadsheet says we should do this. Those things are still important, but you have to zoom out to really understand what might be strategically impacting the incrementality of your CAC on the next dollar spent on ad spend. That's what you've really got to be thinking about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Some of the best businesses I've seen built are sometimes from founders who actually understand the least about ads, because I think as a byproduct of this, you focus so much more on product and new product, and that is actually the biggest lever that matters the most overall time. I think it's healthy and often good for brand founders to understand ads. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of value in it. But one of the most dangerous traps, I think, is spending too much time in it, because it's not the thing that's going to make your business durable. And some people would like come back and say, well, my goal here is just to sell it in 2 years. my comment back would be, if it's not durable, good luck selling it. So like,
Totally.
I think that that there is value in understanding ads, but like it's important to not over fixate on my whole business strategy is in reducing CAC. Your business strategy should probably not be in reducing CAC. You can have efforts to try and get it to come to fruition, but if that is what you are betting on, I would not take that bet personally. Maybe sometimes it'll pan out for some period of time, but I would not feel confident as that being the direction I want to go as a business.
Well, what you just said at the end there, that's the trap in all this. It may work out for a period of time, which feels like validation that is the way, right?
That's like it's like what's the term? What's the sentence? It's like survivorship bias. Like you like because it worked for you, you think it's going to work again. But that doesn't necessarily always pan out. So like I'm trained in working with brands where like, yeah, maybe by doing this thing, it'll work. But like you shouldn't bet on it then working the next time, because if you do this 100 times, it might work 4 times. Or like,
well, I've been,
you know what I mean?
Like, honestly, like I didn't have some of the wisdom that I have now before Free to Grow. I started Free to Grow 4 years ago. I had one use case, which was what? Guardian Bikes. What happened there? Free to Grow's worked with almost 100 brands now. I haven't personally been in all of their P&Ls, but I've seen most of them because I do the CFO audits on the front end, and several of them were my clients. And man, I got surprised. I saw a brand scale from 2 million to 40 million. And I was like, dude, we're going to do 100 million next year. And everything broke the following year. And I was astonished. But that was the year that I learned, wow, we have a durable product, no LTV, there's no consumables, there's no replacement parts, there's no nothing. We have one hero product, and it had sufficient gross margin dollars per order. But like, this is actually kind of astonishing. We got up to 2 million a month in meta spend. Like, and it was profitable and it printed money bottom line. But what happened? What did we learn? We learned, one, what the TAM was on Meta for that customer. 2, we learned that, hey, we're a nascent product category. We're the first mover. Guess what we attracted? A bunch of competition. And that year 3 is when the competition showed up, right? And all of a sudden, everything started changing. And what did the brand then have to scramble to focus on? How the heck do we get LTV? How the heck do we get in other channels? Can we get into Target? Like all the things that we probably should have done on the front end or been thinking about a little bit more proactively, knowing that at some point, being so heavily new customer dominant and in a nascent product category where eventually there's going to be second, third, fourth, fifth movers, we should have been smart enough to know this is going to come at some point. So let's get to Amazon when we should, or let's start working on getting to physical retail earlier. Or let's work on this consumable product line that they eventually successfully launched. But I'm telling this story because like when you're in the middle of it and you're scaling and it's working, it can be intoxicating. I've seen it time and time again. And you're like, man, I know my stuff and I am good. And it's like, you have to always, I think, I don't know if I've said that on this podcast or one of the other ones that I've been on, but like there's this quote from Gary Vaynerchuk. He always says, he's like, we have grown this business by me constantly asking how our competitors are going to put me out of business. That's what I spend all day doing. I spend all day thinking about how my competitors are going to put me out of business, and then I make us go do that. And like, there's a lot of truth to that. All the things we've been talking about here to handle strategically around managing your profitability as you scale is going like, what could go wrong? Do I know my TAM? Do I know the next channel or next product I should get into? And always being kind of on the front of the boat, thinking about those things. And so anyways, that's my final thought on all of this. What's your final thought, Dylan?
Yeah, my final thought on this would basically be that I tend to often recommend like make a channel work and then make it work at volume. Like people diversify, it's almost like people either diversify too early or like never. It's almost like two personality types who are like risk averse who want to diversify, but they don't do too much of it. And it's like, it's a gradient. So there's no one has the perfect answer. But if you're lucky enough to say get to 10 million bucks a year run rate and you are mainly one channel and you don't have high LTV, especially true if you don't have high LTV, even though you might be able to go and double next year, you actually might be better off growing at 50, 60, or 70% and purposefully allocating inventory and resources to trying to go and make your business more durable. Because if you think about everything as like the compounding of value over time, growing 100% a year for 2 years is great, but wouldn't you rather grow 50% year over year for like 10? Like, because if you don't if you don't establish the systems to allow you to have that continued compounded growth, the outcome's going to be way lower. You're almost like the opportunity cost of growing too fast, if you grow in a way that's not sustainable, is so high because just do the math on how compounding works. It's pretty simple. But I think it's really, really hard in ecom because everything is so data driven, which is awesome, that it trains advertisers, us brand founders, to be very much like you can feel the growth so easily. Oh, more of that, more of that, more of that. But sometimes you got to take a little bit of a side bet and think about the long term as well. So it's definitely a balance, but I think that is my closing thought for today, Jon.
Man, all right. Episode 43 is a wrap. Episode 44 coming at you next. Boom.
Let's go.